Hello, good morning, Enablement, and welcome to another episode, which is all about embedding AI sales simulations into Storyline. And of course, as usual, you know what to do. Please like and subscribe. And if you're interested in featuring on one of the episodes, please just reach out to us in the comments, or you can go to our website, which is goodmorningenablement.com, and fill in the form and we'll reach out to you. Well, I'm really excited today because I'm joined by an ex-colleague called Matthew Morris Cook. Now, Matt is an expert in instructional design and lots of other things, but we're focused on the instructional design part of his repertoire. Matt was formerly the head of instructional designers and development at Twilio, which he recently left. But before that, he was an adjunct professor teaching multiple community college courses and also at the University of Phoenix and DevRai. So here we are. Matt's unique set of skills specializes in sales enablement, multimedia, and also works hard with product managers, etc., to help sales professionals quickly qualify leads, navigate all through the sales processes, leveraging course content to do so, and also helping them exceed their targets through using an immersive interactive design. He has done some amazing work in the past. I've seen it firsthand in Twilio. Outstanding. More recently, I just want to give a little plug for his new organization called Keenly. Now, Keenly is a very unique organization that helps new instructional designers start their careers. And he has also, with this organization, provided tailored e-learning solutions with multimedia solutions embedded for Second Nature, which is an AR persona-based simulation software, Modern Family, and also Build with Bree. Now, without further ado, I would like to welcome you, Matt. Thank you so very much for being here. And I'm excited for us to get into it. So let's get into it. I'll just go back to the title, Embedding AI Sales Sims into Storyline. This is where we're going to really get your knowledge out for those people who are just maybe beginning this process or in the middle of it. So can you share with the audience the process of training, the AI sales simulations? And the reason we're asking that question is if you don't know, to build an AI simulation, you have to train it first. So it knows what to expect and the responses. Matt, over to you.
Yeah, so the way you train them, it's actually gotten much easier than it was in the past. So for instance, we started using Second Nature at Twilio a while ago. And the way that used to work is you would actually have to record a bunch of sessions with the AI, let's say like 10 or 5 or 10. And it would take that information and kind of like generate the best responses to actually train the AI. But ChatGPT and other chatbots have actually gotten much easier. So what you really need to do is just, when you're prompting them, just give them the initial context. And that information will give them enough to have a realistic, naturalistic conversation. So for the ones I used for the examples that I'll show you later, you really just have to clarify the roles in the context. So you tell it like, pretend or imagine so in this case, Linda is a head of contact center at Buyify, an e-commerce site. You're concerned about X, Y, and Z, and you care about these things, and you're on a sales call with an AE from, also establish the role of the person that's interacting with the AI. And I've noticed like maintaining like the second person seems to be the best way to get it to stay on its role and to not get confused. Sometimes it will forget that it's supposed to be, the buyer instead of the salesperson, and it will start acting like it's the AE instead of the buyer. So if you maintain that consistent, second person, you are this and the user is this. And also it helps to tell it to give it like continuous context. So when I first started experimenting with the prompts, I didn't specifically tell it to say, respond in this way to the initial prompt and then all other subsequent prompts. So it would kind of converse with you for a little while and then it would kind of forget and then answer like you had just prompted it for the first time, and it would kind of lose that persona. So if you tell it to kind of maintain that consistent role through all the subsequent responses from the user, it'll kind of maintain that role a lot better. The other thing that you have to think about is you have to give it, so we're in sales context, right? So you have to give it like really specific like win parameters. So for the example that I'll show you, I actually set it up so that there's a version that's just kind of generic where I don't tell it. I tell it about its role and a bit about the company, but I don't tell it specifically like what pain points it's dealing with and what kind of responses it's looking for. And so what's going to happen is it's going to basically pull its information from what it knows about, say, being the head of a contact center, and it's just going to endlessly respond to your questions. And when you're like, hey, can we schedule a demo? It's going to be like, I want to learn more.
Right.
There's another problem I have, and it will just have like an infinite amount of pain points and problems that it wants you to answer before it agrees to like a follow-up or something. So if you give it like what I call like win parameters, it really helps it
Yep.
like understand like, hey, your persona, you replied with these three things that I care about. That's my win parameter. Now I'm okay with, setting up a follow-up call. The other interesting thing I learned, and I kind of learned this, it was from an NPR story, and they were interviewing a Google prompt engineer. And long story short, but he was designing like an app to help you in the kitchen. So to help you make recipes and stuff, because there's so much like Gordon Ramsay content out there. It kept calling people donkeys, like
Oh
telling them they were
no.
idiots. And so he's like, I got to find a way to make this like a more natural, like personable AI that I can talk to. So he gave it like this really intensely deep background. Like
Right.
you were once, a coffee shop owner, and you love doing watercolors in the summer by the beach, and like just like a crazy amount of personalized depth. And that really helped make that AI more personable. So I kind of did that for the simulation here. I went a little bit overboard in terms of the background detail, but it really helps to give, because I think what it's doing, I don't know, deeply what it's doing in the background. I don't think a lot of AI researchers know, but I think what you're doing is when you're giving it a background and a personality, you're giving it a more, let's say, like limited set of responses. And so instead of just pulling every possible, generic thing about being the head of a contact center, it's giving it like a more limited context where it's going to respond more naturally. Otherwise, it's going to act like the most generic human being in the world when you're talking to it. So that was one interesting thing I added to the example.
No, that's fantastic. I was just making me think back when we used to do some onboarding simulations in, 2 or 3 companies ago, and we would do the simulations in person. So in their
Yeah.
onboarding, you would create a background story for the C-suite or whatever persona you were selling to with a case study. And then during the training, that's how you would try to progress the sellers to get confident in selling to that persona. What's awesome about, embedding the AI into your training content is, they're getting a safe environment if they, if they don't feel comfortable, because a lot of people don't like doing those in-person role plays, although I still think they're some of the best. But this way it allows them to do it in a safe environment whilst they're learning about the other parameters within the course content. And I know, Matt, that you've been doing this for, a good 2 or 3 years before it was when Second Nature was a baby in the area. I know you have a lot of knowledge. And on that note, now a lot of people utilize AI now because it's just increased. It's like a really fast highway now. AI is in everything, touching everything, speeding up tasks, creating efficiencies. But what's different about your approach, Matt? What do you do differently when you're thinking about integrating AI, any kind of AI technology? You can still focus on persona if you like to answer, but what is different about your approach?
Yeah, I think the way I think about it is I just think of it as like another tool in the toolkit. I think understandably it's an exciting new tool and everyone wants to use it for everything and use
Yeah.
it everywhere. And I don't have to have one-on-ones with my, if I'm a sales manager, I don't have to do one-on-ones anymore. I can just send them to Gong's AI graded, sales conversation tool. And I think that's really a mistake. I think it's just another tool in the toolbox. I don't think it's meant to, I think it helps make things in other contexts more interesting, more dynamic. You can do a lot of interesting things like this sales persona, you can talk to it live as if you're on a call, like with Second Nature, or you can chat with it, but you can also put it in other contexts. So for instance, at Twilio, my last company, I know a lot of the SDR managers were talking about having more meaningful conversations on like your first message on LinkedIn, right?
Right.
So that's something you could design a chatbot that's responding to, say, like a LinkedIn messenger message, and you're making first contact, and how do you gain their attention? Or it can even like, you could even program it to respond to like a cold email, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can really just, for me, it's just, I find it interesting to put it the context of like more traditional sales training. So like if I'm doing an e-learning course on like a product pitch. So for instance, what I'm doing in the example, and I actually did this at Twilio a little bit because I got put on the Flex team, and that's like a CCAS contact center. So what I did is I actually made the Sims. So you'd have to talk to the Sims to, for instance, do your qualification and discovery. Like, do they have the budget? Ask them about what kind of technology they use. For instance, like maybe your product isn't supported in a particular country. And if that persona says that's where our call center is located, then you can't qualify that product, right? So it gives you an interesting way of like, you talk to the sim and you talk to the AI to kind of get the information that you would during like, say, discovery or qualification. And you can really enhance those contexts and make it more interesting than just like even like a very interactive e-learning. You're just going to take it to another level when you get to embed it. I think it's also great. You can sprinkle it in different places. So for instance, maybe you're struggling like selling on a particular product point, and you need to work on a very minute aspect of the sales on the sales process. You can prompt the AI to have that particular concern, and maybe you can pull responses. So one of the great things about using a system like Gong records all your calls. So for instance, if you had a lot of sellers losing out on deals with particular types of potential buyers, you could actually like take transcripts from your Gong calls on the problematic ones. Tell AI to like, okay, let's find the commonality between all these calls and the way that the customers are talking about your product. And you can reverse engineer that into like a very targeted sales scenario where you're going to work on very nuanced skills. So you can use it for kind of general, just practicing basic product pitches, but you can also like really fine tune it to like really nail in some like really detailed, nuanced stuff in your sales process. So.
Very good. And so thank you for sharing that. There's a lot of information there.
Yeah.
But just to recap on what you were saying, just briefly, because you got into a lot of specifics, which was fantastic, but your approach is different because you take the opportunity to only integrate AI into e-learning when you think it could be very useful in, helping the seller in the sales process to do almost like from a coaching perspective. I mean, that's really framing what you said. I hope that's what you were focusing in on how you use it differently, perhaps to others.
Yeah. And I think if you look at the marketing from a lot of these companies, they kind of are selling their AI tools as like, hey, you don't have to have one-on-one meetings anymore. You don't have to have peer review sessions because our AI is going to grade your responses. Right. I don't think that's the right way to go. I think it's a good way to enhance existing learning and really up-level things and fine-tune things. I don't think it's a great standalone be-all tool. I think it's better to augment things and make things more dynamic than it is to just be like, I'm going to spend all my time talking to, a salesperson at chatbot. I don't think that's going to be fun for anyone.
No, 100% agree with you. And again, it just brings me back to, I think it was like probably in 2018, I want to say, in a company that makes work for you, an automation software company. What we had implemented in there was a coach, but it was you had the sales rep go through their own pitch and scenario, which was recorded, and then AI graded it based on what you called the win criteria. But what's better now is it's doing it with another person speaking back to them. And I think that is, it's going to change the game a lot for people who like to learn in that way. We don't all learn the same. And that's another great way of embedding it there. So now, everyone probably, like my good self, thinks in 10 years' time, everything's going to be AI. I'm going to sit here and eat bonbons and everyone else, everything's going to be done for me. Maybe not everyone thinks that, but I do for sure.
Yeah, I think weirdly enough, I think the biggest weakness of AI is that it's okay, but not great. So a lot of people are it's going to create content for you, and it's not going to be great content. It's not going to be like really meaningful content. It's not going to be, exciting content, but it's pretty good. It's a pretty good start. And a lot of people are just like, that's good enough, and they stop there. I think that's the biggest weakness, weirdly, is that it gets you to like the revision stage of your design process. And then I think a lot of people are just feel like that's enough and they just need to stop there. It'll kind of, in my experience, it kind of gives you kind of like the generic, like if you were to ask 100 people about this topic, well, what are they going to say to you? And it's going to be like, the most generic response it can make. And I think it's good because it gets you to a good starting point. It might give you ideas about how to organize a course or maybe some content. But I think the other problem is, like, let's say I tell ChatGPT, design me a course on harassment and discrimination training, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
It'll give me all the content and it'll organize everything into bullets and it'll have a structure to it. And I think the other trap people can get into is like, they also don't question the structure. They just accept it.
Right.
Like, here, I got this served on a platter and now I'm just going to take it and run with it. No, you still have to go through that reflective human process to actually like really make that content your own, and also to make sure the content is accurate. I was a tech writer in my past life, so content is king. AI can hallucinate, it can have some bad information, and it's still your responsibility to go and double check all their work. But it's a good starting point. It gets you started. It makes the development process much faster. So yeah, that'd be what I would say about its weakness.
No, thank you. Because I think that's key, that point you said there, that the weaknesses of AI are more based around your interpretation of the content it brings forward. Because to your point, it probably is very generic based on what it's scraping, from where it's getting it from, all the different websites, etc. So yeah, that's a good point to note, that you're still responsible as the instructional designer to make sure that there's all that NSA, like the knowledge, the skill, etc., when you're building out this content. So that's a good point. Do you think that organizations are starting, now it's got a little bit more credibility and kudos? It was a bit scary a few years ago. Now it's gaining traction. Do you think that organizations rely too much on AI in their content and instructional design endeavors?
Yeah, I think so. I think it can be, like I said, it's an exciting tool and people want to really start digging into it and use it. But I think it can be overused, particularly like when you're designing courses or just in other areas too. Like some places I've experienced it is I've actually had to talk to an AI recruiter, and that was not a wonderful experience at all. And when I thought about it too, after the call was done, I was like, first of all, the AI wasn't very good. It was like, I would ask it a question. It would be like, I don't have the answer to that, but I'll get back to you. Or like, and I know, of course, it would never get back to you. But I mean, it was also like a 10-minute call. So it's like, I feel like it's something that you can still do as a human. And I don't really know how much time you're really going to save by automating such a simple 10-minute call from a human recruiter. You're really going to alienate a lot of your potential employees. I did not feel good about it. And also, I think like the AT sometimes they're very rigid, and can miss a lot of like nuance that you would get just like looking at a real resume from a real human being.
Yeah, I mean, conceptually, I like the idea to do a first screening with some kind of interactive agent. It sounds brilliant, but in reality, you're probably dehumanizing the experience for the actual individual that you want to employ, and maybe they're going to think, "Hey, you don't value me," and you might lose some really good candidates, along the way. I think that was a really, really good call out there. Hopefully I never have to do that in my future. Matt, tell us a little bit more about how AI can fit within different learning modalities. So what I'm referring to is, is it learning in person? Is it e-learning? Like, is it on demand? Is it virtual? Are there a lot of exercises? Because this is the reason I'm asking is, what about that, the Kirkpatrick evaluation? How does AI help you to evaluate that the learner has retained the knowledge? So with that in mind, how can AI help fit in with different learning modalities?
I think I talked about some of the different contexts. I really think it's a valuable tool for, if we're going to stick with the sales simulations. Like, for example, you can use it for onboarding, like before, say you're a new AE, you've never sold anything. It's a safe way to kind of just practice and getting the product pitch down and like getting your generic talking points down. But then I feel like you don't have to stop there. Like, you can use it as a just-in-time resource. For instance, if I made an e-learning course, say to do like a product pitch, right? I might take that initial course, which is maybe meant for onboarding new AEs, and I might make it into like a just-in-time resource. So like, let's say you're a new AE and you're going on your first call, you could bring up that AI sim and just practice for 10 minutes before you get on the call and really, get your nerves, get your nerves unshaken and like get ready to actually make the call. So I think you can really think about like how you can bring it into new contexts. Or let's say you're having a peer review on, let's say, one of your sales calls. Let's say you lost a deal and you want some feedback from your sales buddy on like what you could have done differently. Well, you can run it through the AI, do the transcript, ask it, how do you think I could have worded things better, or like, what can I improve on? It's going to give you some generic responses, but it might stimulate some ideas and like help you through that reflection process, right? You're still having that human reflection process, but you're just using the AI to kind of like start that process and lead into another process, which is like the human to human peer review, like talking to your manager one-on-one. And I feel like it can be like a good bridge between different modalities. And that's how I like to use it and think about it.
Excellent. I mean, again, just to kind of verbally underline the point, what I'm hearing you say is that it doesn't matter what modality you use, this persona-based AI, these simulations can be used as, a just in time. It can be used in person because you can, put them at a laptop in a room if you wanted to do some safe coaching circles or whatever. So, okay, so that's great. So it kind of can fit in with all of the learning modalities, basically. And just going down that train a little bit more, can AI help create personalized and adaptive learning experiences based on the different ways that people do learn? Can AI help you achieve that?
Oh, yeah. There's some really cool stuff people are actually making. So there's like a traditional branching. Let's say like 10 years ago, you were going to make like a branching scenario for like a sales situation. So you can actually do that now with ChatGPT. So for instance, I could make an infinite branching sales scenario where instead of having set responses, I could give the AI parameters and say like, or you can have a mix. Like one of the things I was toying with when programming this one was like, do I want it to be completely freeform, or, should it be something like where you start by having, let's say, an SDR AE say like some different initial prompts and see how that evolves. So there's some really interesting ways that you can take like existing e-learning and kind of make it more adaptive and dynamic. And like I said, the chatbot will sit there and talk with you forever if you want.
No, that was great. And just, for any, I'm sure you all know, but if you don't know, when Matt's referring to branching, it's like the what if scenarios in a sales conversation that would happen in real life. The branches of the conversation, did you get a yes or no answer? If yes, go here. If no, do this. Just wanted to make sure, there might be someone who doesn't know, so I'm trying to be helpful.
Yeah, no, that's right.
I have like 2 or 3 more questions that I'd love to ask you. This is very, very compelling for me. But you know what I really like? I like show and tell. And I'm sure our audiences, anyone who's listening and watching you would really love to see what that looks like in action. And I think, did you do some training with an AI persona that you could perhaps share with us?
I did.
Just show us right now?
I did. Yeah, sure. Let me share my screen and let me know if it works here. Let me know if you can see my screen now.
We can see your screen.
All right. So for this example, I'm just trying to give you an idea about like how you can maybe embed the sales sims within a different context. So like this is just a mock course I made where maybe you start out and you go through the entire sales process. So maybe you have like a dashboard that kind of looks like Salesforce, and you got potential leads in your pipeline and you got to figure out which ones to reach out to. So, maybe you have these different options for people that you want to engage with.
Okay.
And you can use the course to kind of take it through that whole process. So in this example, I have different personas at different stages. So for the example I have, we got Linda, who's the head of the contact center. She's already been qualified by your SDR. So now you're going to move it into like the discovery stage, right? So you click discovery, and then here's where I can kind of show you the ChatGPT. So I use both ChatGPT and Gemini for my examples. And there's other ones that you can use too. Claude is a great option. I could not get the... So what I'm doing here is I have a subscription to like the API platform for Gemini and ChatGPT. So it gives you like an API token and an address to kind of interface with it. Storyline is basically run. The only coding you can do is in JavaScript.
Right.
And Gemini, so ChatGPT, it worked great, but Gemini did not have the code ready for the JavaScript. So I actually had to take code it had given and translate it into JavaScript to make it work. I mean, it worked for Gemini, but I haven't tested it on. There's so many different chatbots. I haven't tested them all. But here you can see, here's an example.
I was going to say, that's a really good tip, though, because you've already experienced and you've shared. There's a challenge there. Sorry, Matt, continues.
Yeah, and so for this one, I just have an example. Right now, it's set to like its most simple settings. So, for instance, I gave it just kind of a generic background, but I didn't really go into detail. I didn't talk about the win conditions, for instance. Also, so this is ChatGPT. You can use Gemini or ChatGPT if you want. So, let's say you're just starting a conversation. So you just be like, "Hi, Linda. To you." Yeah. Oh, that's all. All right, so here's ChatGPT's response to that. So what it's doing is it's basically taking that, it's parsing that response and just displaying it as plain text within the box there. So you can see it's making up some stuff about what its role is. And if you start questioning it more, like, for instance, if I ask, like, what's your tech stack? I haven't told it that in this more simple version. So it'll just make up what it thinks.
No, well, I mean, that's what generative AI is doing, right? I think that's what it's called, where it's giving you a scenario that could be true based on the parameters you put in, correct?
Exactly, yeah. So, you can also use Gemini. They're pretty similar. I found ChatGPT is a little bit better than Gemini, but they're pretty closely paired up here. So I'll just show you the Gemini one too. And so this is the simple setting. So let's say I wanted to make the persona a little more realistic and actually have those win conditions. So I'm going to set it to complex. And now I can ask it questions like, so hi, Linda.
A budget one or something?
Tell me about, tell me about problems you're having at
all right.
solution. And then now it'll give kind of more detailed things that you can follow up on. So in this case, she's got an old legacy IVR. She can't really program it to get to the right agents. So you'd say something like, great, Flexio can help you with that.
This is like an omni-channel solution that you're pitching, right? Yeah, got it.
I took Flex and made it Flexio for these.
You made it Flexi. Okay.
I made it idea. And now it will, so it'll keep going. And so if you go long enough, it'll, if you hit those three, I set it up with like 3 basic pain points.
Right.
And once you hit those 3 pain points, you can say something like, hey, it sounds like our product might be a good solution for you. Do you want to schedule like a demo? And then if you've hit those conditions, it will say yes, basically. And then here's an example of like a focused, when I was talking about create like nuanced conversations. So for this one, I added some details about other competitors that she's considering. So I can ask it like, so she's looking for, so her current solution is like Genesis on-prem and she's trying to do Genesis Cloud. And so I have win conditions for that. So and you can say like, if you pitch your product in a certain way, she'll say yes to a demo. So like, here's where as an example of where you can, so I'm mining the information. So just like I would on like a qualification or discovery call, I'm trying to find out more about my prospect. Are they a good fit for my company? Maybe they're not.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't have the budget for it. Maybe it's not the right time. But you can like, here's an example of like kind of mixing up those modalities. So here I'm actually have like a quiz set up. So it's like a, like a kind of like a battle card, like a persona card. So,
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to Linda and find out some stuff about her company and her role and like what her pain points are. I can take like a quiz. And this is just like a standard drag and drop quiz.
Yep.
And I'll just for the sake of, yeah. So hopefully I remembered the right. I got it right.
It's okay.
So now when you return to it, now her card is 100% complete. I got all the check marks, all that good stuff. So you can kind of use it to, you're mining information, you're qualifying your leads, and you can use it to kind of take you through that entire sales process. And of course, this is like a static, just chatting with a chat bot here.
Just to kind of point out to our listeners that Storyline, if you're unfamiliar with it, is almost like creating, computer programming for content creation, which is why it has all of these open API capabilities in it to import pre-existing content in Swarm or integrate with ChatGPT and Second Nature. So that's what you've programmed this in, is Storyline. Is that correct?
Yeah, it doesn't come. You have to add you have to add the programmability on top of it. So it doesn't come out of the box with ChatGPT built into it or anything like that. But you can use JavaScript to interface with it. And I'm also trying to experiment with using Azure to have like a serverless environment where I could actually, that way I could interface with probably all the different chatbot tools. Right now I just have ChatGPT and Gemini, but I really like Claude, and I would love to be able to interface with that and build that into e-learnings too.
And as you can see, told you Matt was an expert in working with AI in content creation. Now, I've got a couple more questions before we have to let you go, unfortunately. So let's talk about, what challenges or risks do organizations face when integrating AI into their training content? And if there are challenges or risks, how can they overcome them? So number one, part one is, what challenges do they face?
Yeah, so, I brought up some examples before, but I'll give you this example because I stay pretty active in Reddit communities for sales. And this person brought up a really great example. They were using Outreach and had all of their email drip campaigns and all that fun stuff like mapped out. Like at a particular time of day, it would send this type of email, or it would reach out on LinkedIn and so forth at particular times. And he really wasn't getting a lot of results from it. So he just, out of the blue, is just like, you know what, I'm just going to do it manually. And like at 11 o'clock at night, he reached out to this person on like LinkedIn, and the person responded because he's like, well, I know it came in at like 11:25 at night, so I know that you're an actual. And that was enough to get him to start that conversation with the customer and prospect and actually get a deal done. Because you know what, like human beings are meant to like see and recognize patterns, and we all know when someone's just pumping out some cold email templates to us, or I put like a dot in front of my name on LinkedIn because that way when I get recruiters reaching out, I'll be like, hey, Matt Morris Cook, I was just looking at your LinkedIn profile and noticed you might be a good fit for this job. But even if I didn't do that, it's so obvious. Like the voice of ChatGPT it's the voice of generic humanity. It's not your unique voice. And so I think what people need to do is just remember that it's a starting point. It's not an end point. It doesn't mean that you don't have to actually like think about how you're going to message people. It doesn't mean that you actually don't have to look at people's LinkedIn profiles, like really digging in, like looking at their stories, like what do they care about? What are they liking on LinkedIn or other social media? Like, like maybe they have a newsletter, maybe they have their own website. It's like, you can't substitute, especially in sales. Like sales is a very human-centered job, right? And you're never gonna close a lot of deals by just relying on AI automating everything for you, because people can see it and people are honestly kind of sick of getting ChatGPT to death. So you have to maintain the human touch, I think.
Absolutely. I think personalization, making things relevant and meaningful to people, and not always using AI generated voices is, it's like a hybrid blended approach. I loved what you said earlier, like this is a tool. This is a tool that you can use to enhance your training for a specific kind of learner, and to keep it, still have that human touch to when you're building out and getting it ready. And my last question, Matt, this has been such a fantastic discussion. Just from your point of view, who's been working with this for many, many years now, are there any contexts where AI doesn't fit or where you can see it applied inappropriately? I just heard you say about the cold emails, like, seen one, seen them all, right? Practically, if you're using ChatGPT.
Yeah, and we talked about the recruiting and the ATS stuff. Yep. I think a lot of it's not necessarily that it doesn't fit. I think you can find a way to fit it into a lot of contexts. It's just, is that the only, are you using that to replace the human interaction? Like, and I'm not sure if I brought this up before either, but if you look at, you go to Outreach, you go to Gong, and some of their marketing, some of the ways they market is like, hey, managers, you don't have to do this stuff anymore. You don't have to schedule like in-person trainings anymore or get people together. And it's like, because you can just do it all with AI and you can store your calls and give you feedback. So it's not necessarily that it's like doesn't fit. It's just, it can't be the end all be all. It can't be a replacement for your one-on-one manager meetings. Like you need to have those conversations. You need to talk with your human peers. You can't just rely on AI scoring. So I think it's less about like, doesn't necessarily fit into a particular context. It's about using it in the context responsibly and thoughtfully and making sure you're always providing that you're not getting rid of the human aspect of it, but you're just using it to start or, refine that process or to get you to reflect on the human things that you need to do, which I think is really important for sales in particular.
Thank you so very much, Matt. Listen, from my point of view, as a previous VP of sales enablement, working with, talent like Matt and Matt himself, I have seen the power and the benefit of integrating some of those persona-based AI simulations into training and the power and the effect it's had when it's put, in the right way. So thank you so very much, Matt. I'm going to give you a little golf clap because we're not in person. I wish we were, but we're not. Thank you. That was such a great deal of information. I hope we can bring you back on and get an episode with Second Nature. That'll be incredibly entertaining. Listen, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Please like and subscribe, share it with your friends. And if you want to get in touch with Matt, for his services or maybe even just to make a connection, his website details and contacts will be in the comments. And it's Keenly is the name of the organization. Matt, thank you so very much. We're so very grateful. And wow, that has been so informative and a wonderful conversation. Thank you so very much.
Thanks, Maria. Good talking to you.